Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. People respond in different ways when encountering someone who is homeless. Some might have questions like how to help, but are afraid to ask. Well, there is a seminar this week that has you covered. Jacob Barker has tonight's top story.
John LeBute doesn't mince words when asked about what it's like being homeless.
The streets is no fun. The streets is freaking hell.
LeBute says he feels a stigma around homelessness. Using his bag as an example, he says some might assume there are drugs in it. What he pulls out instead is a picture of his family.
I rarely see my family, but I got something to remember my family by.
He says people react in different ways to his homelessness, and for him, that can be scary.
Being homeless, you never know what to expect next, all right? You never know about like being a target of someone else, because they would think that you might have stolen something of theirs.
I think it's a stigma and isolation. So we've isolated folks that have been on the street. We have a fear, we don't understand that story, and so we have a tendency to withdraw.
That's Bob Cameron with the Downtown Windsor Community Collaborative. It's a group that hopes to break through these kinds of misunderstandings with dialogue.
Really basic tools that reassure us. Looking folks in the eye, a smile, asking for a name, what's your need, how are you in this situation, and is there any way I can help? But also getting the tools to be able to refer folks. And there are incredible resources out there, but we as a community, as neighbors, most often are unfamiliar with what they are.
On Wednesday, the DWCC will hold a seminar with outreach and frontline workers who encounter people experiencing homelessness, addictions, and mental health issues every day, encouraging people to find healthy ways to interact.
We want to address concerns like relieving fear, but definitely relieving the stigma that often goes attached with being on the streets.
Hope Cameron, too, is experiencing homelessness. She says when you choose to treat someone better, they'll treat you better in return.
Just be kind. You don't have to have money. You don't have to bless. It's just, hey, how are you? A simple smile, or hey, how are you?
Hope says it's just about having an open mind and caring. And if you can't be nice, she says, just walk away. Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
Jacob's story was all about knowing what to do and how to help someone experiencing homelessness. Well, we spoke with one local who luckily didn't second guess himself, and he jumped right into action when he spotted someone in need. And the result, he saved a life.
Sunday night, I was taking stuff out of my car for the soup shack, getting ready to start for 6:45, and some young man came up to me and said he thought there was somebody sitting here. So we saw a couple bags, and I didn't think nothing of it. So I came back out, and I was like, I better go check. So I came and checked, and I seen the bag sitting here, and underneath was a woman buried in the snow. Her face was in the snow. Her whole body was covered. She didn't have her coat on or nothing. She just had a couple sweatshirts. So first I woke her up to make sure she was okay and she was still alive, because we didn't know what the outcome would have been. So she responded to me, and then I asked her, can I pick you up and bring you inside? And she's like, yes. So I picked her up and brought her inside. And my volunteers right away reacted and got her some coffee and a blanket to wrap around her. The main thing that she was more concerned about is she's like, I'm so sorry to bother you, I'm so sorry to bother you. But it took us that 1 second just to come and take a look to make sure, and sure enough, that she was there. And if we never would have thought of to come look, who knows what would have happened to her. Someone actually did that for me years ago when I was in the snowbank, and I just remembered that when I was picking her up, someone actually came and woke me up and said, hey, you okay, years ago. So basically we just, take that extra time to take that look, and if you see something that's not right, go and check it out, because you just never know what's going to be there.
Chris Potter joins us now for a first look at weather. And Chris, I do have to acknowledge the story that we just heard, because it's so nice to hear that people are willing to help out people who are homeless, especially in these temperatures, because it's so cold, and that those temperatures continue into today and into tomorrow, I assume.
Yeah, Kat, it's sometimes hard for us who have homes to realize what the struggle is when you're living out on the street, and especially when it gets this cold. And the good news is there is a warm up at the end of the forecast, but it's still going to be a very cold night tonight, and it's still going to be chilly tomorrow as well. Not much in terms of active weather. Decent amount of sun early this morning. Now we're clouding over. Temperature still well below normal. Luckily, the winds are very light compared to yesterday and the day before, but it's still going to be a cold night. -11, -12, feeling like the minus mid-teens. Flurries move in through the overnight. Flurries for morning and afternoon before it clears. We'll talk about that warm up coming up.
Thanks very much, Chris. Up next, workers at colleges are holding rallies across the province. They're calling for more provincial funding for what they're calling a crisis, with colleges cutting courses to save money. Universities are also grappling with the same. And as Lorenda Redekop explains, those affected would like to see it be a more prominent election issue.
One struggle, one fight, education, workers' rights.
A small rally, but one of several held at colleges across the province. Institutions cutting courses and programs, with fewer international students who pay higher tuition.
My message to Doug Ford would be, instead of spending $3 billion to send out bribery checks before the election to Ontarians, that $1.4 billion over the next year could shore up and stabilize the college system while we deal with this crisis.
We hope this is the first. One recently retired member even showed up today.
It breaks my heart to see the colleges going through what they're going through and my fellow staff, getting laid off and stuff. So I felt it was very important to come back.
George Brown says it's looking into measures, including voluntary retirements. And it's not just colleges affected. York University announced it's suspending new fall admissions to 18 of its humanities programs, all with low enrollment, it says, including English, Spanish, and Jewish studies. Though not all courses within those programs are being suspended.
Art Stiles, thank you. I'll turn to Doug
In this
Ford
week's debate, PC leader Doug Ford defended his government's changes for post-secondary.
When the federal government cut foreign students, we jumped in there.
He says they increased funding, $1.3 billion over 3 years. And as for classes cut,
a couple of classes, David, had 4 or 5 people in it. And we thought that's ridiculous, like a basket weaving course. Let's focus on STEM.
The PCs say they'll add the funded needed to support more students in critical labor market fields, also including nursing, healthcare, and skilled trades. But colleges and universities have said they're in a crisis, and the provincial funding added didn't do enough, echoed by the other main party leaders.
We are funding at the lowest rate of any province in Canada right now. That is shameful. The answer isn't to increase tuitions. The answer is to properly fund post-secondary institutions.
The $1.3 billion that was given to universities and colleges wasn't even enough to make up for the loss in funding from international students.
Doug Ford has set up a Ponzi scheme for our universities and our colleges, that they're relying on foreign students because he never capped them.
The NDP, Green Party, and Liberals all saying they'd boost funding for post-secondary institutions. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Housing, healthcare, and as you heard just there, education are top of mind with local provincial voters. That is according to potential MPPs in Sarnia, Essex, and Chatham-Kent-Leamington. 3 candidates from different ridings spoke at a panel with Matt Allen, host of CBC Radio's Afternoon Drive.
Well, the provincial election campaign is in full swing, and candidates are out knocking on doors, making their pitch to you, the voters. To get a broad sense of what they're hearing, we brought a few candidates from different parties and ridings together this afternoon. We're going to go around briefly here. What is the #1 issue that you're hearing at the door?
When I was knocking on doors, I talked with Tammy, who lives near Rainbow Park in Sarnia, where we have an encampment all year round. The Ontario NDP have promised to create supportive housing for members of our community living in encampments, and we have a plan to build permanently affordable housing for everyone in Ontario, including bringing forward real protections for renters and also doubling social assistance programs such as ODSP and Ontario Works so people can better keep up with the cost of housing.
Well, it is funding in the proper place. It's not funding for the spa at Ontario Place that Doug Ford decided to put her money to. People are paying taxes, and they're paying taxes for this good healthcare system that is the envy of the world, that has gone down the tubes with him. He's had 7 years, and he hasn't done what he needs to do to direct the attention towards it. So yes, it costs money, but that's exactly the priority of where we want our money to go.
Doug Ford already has a majority. He does not need a mandate, and he's not the person who's supposed to be fighting the Trump administration. It should be our federal leader. So I think it's all hogwash. Why this election was even called? It's upwards of $190 million of taxpayer money that is being used senselessly. Our education system, our parents, they just want our children to be taught the basic skills of reading, writing, arithmetic, and life skills, and keeping a lot of the different ideologies out of the education. So those are the main issues that I'm hearing.
At the municipal level, Chatham-Kent is altering its ward boundaries and shrinking its council. CBC spoke with municipal officials to understand why.
Council some time ago initiated a process with a consultant, strategy core, and after a number of meetings, including public meetings at the council table, ultimately they've decided to go with a new council of 14 councillors and 1 mayor. So we currently have 18 councillors, 17 and a mayor, and so we're essentially going down by 3 councillors. There are certain areas, particularly in the urban areas, Chatham, Wallaceburg, where there's been some growth a little bit, and so people who feel like they have a commonality of interest with those particular municipalities or those wards, have been left out. That's being adjusted now, so some of those folks will actually be in one of the 3 Chatham wards.
It was just very confusing for a lot of people, and I think people thought, well, I don't live in a rural ward. I live in the city of Wallaceburg, or I live in the city of Chatham. So why am I not in that ward? So I thought this was needed for those reasons. Sometimes I feel when there's too many voices around the table, I just feel like there's a lot of redundance, a lot of repetition, and sometimes things get lost. And I think smaller is more effective.
There's a renewed call to solve a 30-year-old Windsor Cold Case. Diane Dobson was found brutally murdered on February 15, 1995. She died from a blow to the head before she was left in a ditch in Brighton Beach. On the anniversary of her unsolved murder, Windsor police are again asking for any tips or clues from the public that could lead to answers in her death. Investigators are hopeful that developments in DNA technology may assist in solving this case. Dobson was 36 at the time of her death and a mother of 3. We're going to shift gears here now. A race car driver from Bell River achieved a bucket list goal this past weekend. Craig Bracken raced at Daytona in the 2025 ARCA Series opener, but his dream run took an unexpected and dangerous turn.
I was racing at Daytona International Speedway in the ARCA 200 on Saturday and got involved in somebody else's wreck and ended up in the hospital. Lower back issues, 2 bruised up knees, my right heel is all damaged, and my left ankle, is all swelled up still. We were doing really good. We were just hanging back, staying out of trouble. We already missed 2 big wrecks. The first wreck took out 10 cars. The second one took out about 5 or 6 cars. We were running 16th at the time of the wreck. We were doing really well. We were just trying to get past halfway, and we were only at lap 19 when the wreck happened. On my way right now to leaving Daytona. I stayed here for a couple of days to recuperate. I have a meeting tomorrow morning with a NASCAR doctor just to go over everything, go over details, and a family physician after that, and see how long the recuperating is going to take, and looking for a ride for another race. Just going to keep on rolling. That's what I'm born to do. I love to race. And basically, I grew up on a farm in Bell River, Ontario. My dad was involved in racing. He actually was part owner on a race car with Jerry Sainage, and I started racing that checker flag at the age of 15. Checker flag was closed in 1992, but 1991 and 92, we actually raced at Ridgetown Speedway and South Buxton But I'm 52 years old, but I'm still aiming for the Cup Series. There's no reason to stop.
A live look outside there. Another chilly one today. We'll have more weather after the break, later in the program rather. And when we come back, a sentence for a key leader of the so-called Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. We will have the details right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. A key organizer in the so-called Freedom Convoy that gridlocked downtown Ottawa for weeks has been sentenced. Pat King is the first convicted leader of the 2022 protests to face significant punishment. CBC's David Fraser reports.
A key player in one of the country's largest protests walked into court today surrounded by supporters. Pat King received a 3-month conditional sentence for his role in the Freedom Convoy, far from the 10 years Crown prosecutors asked for.
Mr. King will spend the next 90 days, 3 months back in Alberta under house arrest, and it'd be followed by a period of probation.
He was given credit for 161 days already served in jail. The judge's decision comes 3 years after his arrest, a relief for King and his partner.
I feel honestly like a little emotional, yeah. It's been a lot on all of us, on his family, on his mother.
In court, King apologized to the people of Ottawa for his actions and pledged not to return to the city. But he still faces additional charges for his actions during the trial, including violating his bail and perjury, which means he can't speak publicly right now. In 2022, King was a leader and promoter of the protests against COVID-19 lockdown measures and the Liberal government, known for his provocative online presence.
It's game on, boys. Blow those horns. Let them go. Let those horns fire as loud as you can.
The federal government used the Emergencies Act to end the protests. King is the first key figure from the Freedom Convoy to be sentenced.
You might hate Mr. King, you may love Mr. King, but at the end of the day, that is not the role of justice. We sentence people for things that they did in line proportionally with their responsibility.
2 other leaders, Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, have also stood trial and are still waiting for a judge's decision. That's expected next month. As it stands now, King will be on probation for another year after his house arrest ends, but prosecutors could appeal the sentence. David Fraser, CBC News, Ottawa.
Turning now to a health scare in India. Officials in the west part of the country are struggling to contain an outbreak of a potentially deadly autoimmune disorder. It's happening in the city of Pune, a major IT and manufacturing hub. Despite increased surveillance and testing, cases continue to rise. Salima Shivji has more.
An everyday task now much more difficult. Avanti Naik has to have her mother with her constantly, guiding her in the kitchen. She's still suffering from creeping paralysis. That's also hit more than 200 others in her neighborhood. She has Guillain-Barré syndrome, or GBS, a rare disorder where a body's immune system attacks its nerves.
There was a swelling here.
It started with seeing double and got much worse.
This jaw became heavy and I was not able to speak. So that time I was very much worried. And then we ran to the hospital.
She spent 2 weeks in intensive care, unable to speak or swallow. Avanti was one of the first patients in Pune in India's western Maharashtra state that's seen a worrying outbreak of GBS, which isn't contagious but has no cure. 9 people have died. Authorities quickly set up dedicated hospital beds, and with the patients all from a specific area of Pune, they started to trace the source, a pathogen known to cause GBS that officials believe came from contaminated water in a well that supplies tens of thousands of people.
The outbreak points to a larger problem, not just in Pune, one of the fastest growing cities in a rapidly developing India, when proper facilities like water purification plants aren't catching up to the pace of urbanization.
For this doctor who treated several of the patients, it's painful to think the outbreak could have been avoided.
This is a public health failure. We need to wake up.
He says while the mortality rate from GBS is quite low, treatment is very expensive, and the long-term effects are hard to predict.
But the morbidity, that means wheelchair-bound people, or people still having residual weakness, or still having symptoms like tingling numbness of both limbs, is still substantial. That is the real cost of this war which we have fought in the last 1 month.
A war that's not yet over. Confirmed cases are still rising, but more slowly than at the outbreak's peak. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Pune.
We'll have Chris Potter with us right after the break for more as the temperatures start to go on up. Stay with us. Chris Potter is back with us now for more on weather. And Chris, you deliver good news that temperatures are getting a little bit warmer for us. Still cold, but warmer.
Yeah, and it kind of brings me to this, the daily stats for today. Hard to believe, but the normal daytime high is close to 1 degree. It's actually bang on 1 degree. Normal overnight low for this time of year is closer to -6. Obviously, we've been well below those two numbers for the past couple of days. We're still, unfortunately, going to be below that for tonight and tomorrow. If you're not a fan of the cold, though, 5 days away, we could climb easily above the 0 degree mark, possibly into the mid-single digits. What a 180 turn. Temperatures right now, -9 in Windsor, -8 Toronto, -14 Barrie, and -11 through Ottawa. And we're basically seeing -8 to -10 across southwestern Ontario. Of course, the winds not as strong as yesterday, but still enough to make it feel like the mid-teens. In terms of active weather, sunshine through the morning, replaced by cloud cover. There still is some lake effect activity, very weak. These aren't snow squalls, it's just some lake effect flurries moving in the vicinity of London, Grand Bend, Goderich, not in the vicinity of Windsor. But as we step forward through tonight, there is going to be a weak feature that starts to build in from the southwest, from the American Midwest, and that's not going to produce significant snowfall by any means, but we're still looking at flurries. They move in before daybreak tomorrow, so expect at least flurries in the vicinity for the morning. And into the afternoon, there's still going to be the likelihood of flurries. It's going to be very light in Windsor and Chatham. It does look like there's going to be some lake enhancement off of Lake Huron in the vicinity of Sarnia, possibly in towards London, maybe a dusting to 1-2 centimeters because of that enhancement off of Lake Huron. Once we step forward into the day on Friday, we start off with a decent amount of cloud. It thins out midday. Then we start to see a little bit more cloud move in for the overnight and into the day on Saturday. But it's still going to be a quiet day on Saturday, and it's not going to be completely overcast all day long. It does look like the morning cloud will start to thin out a little bit, and we start to see some sunshine. Not complete sunshine, but some blue sky nonetheless. Temperatures through the overnight anywhere from -10 to -12, feeling as low as -14 to -17. Into the day tomorrow, temperatures still struggling. We're looking at -6 on average, with once again scattered light flurries. Once we get into the overnight and into Friday, that's when the winds begin to change, but it will be more noticeable by the weekend and early next week. -3 for your high on Friday, generally a mix of sun and cloud for the afternoon. We are fairly cloudy for Saturday with sunny breaks during the afternoon. -4 your high, climbing to 0 for us on Sunday, generally overcast, but it's really Sunday night and into Monday that the next more robust system moves in. It does look like it will start off as snow early in the morning, Kat, but then by the afternoon as temperatures climb to 4, showers and drizzle is expected. What a contrast.
Yeah, amazing. We go back to rain. That's wild. Thank you so much for that, Chris.
You got it.
And thanks to you all for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. Have a good one.